And what I mean by that is most essays are fine. They are the writings of a 17 or 18-year-old. And guess what? That gets you into college. In fact, that can get you into some of the most prestigious institutions in the United States and around the world. And you don't always want to be in that 5%, by the way, because about 2.5% of that other 5% are the really remarkable, knock your socks off, incredible college essay that was just a piece of Shakespearean writing. And the other 2.5% are absolute train wrecks where you look at it and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this student wrote this way or chose to write about this thing. So when I think about the college essay, my reminder for students is what it's not. It's not a place for you to talk about your grades. Guess what? We can see your grades. The Common App essay is not for arguing why you want to attend a specific school. That's awkward because it goes to every school on Common App. It's just uncomfortable. It's not a 5-paragraph paper for English class. You've done that. At least we hope you can do that based on your English grade. We know what your activities are and your resume is, so don't repeat it. And oh my goodness, you only have 650 words. So don't try and tell your entire life story. The number of essays, and I'm sure Jesus has seen this too, that start with I was born is like a little bit of concern because you have a lot of life. So what I'm looking for is this opportunity to give a little bit of sense of who the personality is behind all these numbers and these data points. And ultimately for you to tell your story. And I know that sounds really cheesy, but as an admission officer, an admission counselor reading college essays, a couple of things to know about us. One is we do this because we're excited to get students to higher education. And I always think it's important to remind yourself of who's reading these applications. So the first thing to know and take a breath is that this is not computers, it's not AI, they're people. And so it's going to be a little subjective. You're never going to make everyone happier with your essay. So go in knowing that and stop worrying about, is this not going to be, am I going to like it? Is the admission counselor going to like it? Because one colleague of mine might read an essay and think it's amazing. I may read it and think, meh. Another reminder I always say is we're not professors. At most institutions, it's your admission officer that's going to read your essay. So sometimes students will do a lot of name dropping of specific things in the academic departments and colleagues. And I'm not a professor. We're doing this because we want to understand who you are. And really, I'm going to harp on this a little bit. Your key takeaways. You have 650 words to get something across to me in a college essay. So at USF, what I'm looking for is what's the key thing you want to know? A dirty little secret of college admission. And you may not know this. At most schools, your application will be under review for between 6 to 10 minutes. That's it. I don't mean 6 to 10 minutes for your essay. I mean 6 to 10 minutes for your entire application. Now, before you get worried, know that all the applications are ordered in the same way. And so we know where to look for things. We read thousands of applications. But that's how much time you have. So there's not a lot of time for us to digest. There's not a lot of time for us to necessarily reflect on what you say. You have to be a little bit particular and think about, wow, I got to decide, what do I want this person to know about me? What's the thing that I want that point about what topics to write or not write? It's not that there are necessarily bad topics, but it's this question of, am I writing this when you sit down, is this the thing I want the college to know about me? Yes or no? Is this worth knowing? So I always find that when you pick a topic, it's just a vehicle for your story. And that's the other thing. Often I actually don't care what the topic is. That sounds really silly because a good college essay isn't necessarily about the topic. A good college essay is always about you. It's just what's the thing that allows you to unpack something about yourself? What the topic that allows us to share, allows you to share something about yourself, allows you to share a key moment or key aspects of your personality or things that are important to you. So I've seen good essays that were about seemingly banal topics. Like I had one that I always talk about, it was about a girl walking her dog every morning, which is not, if you have a dog, you have to walk it. It's not that exciting. But she uses a way to pull out things and share things that were helpful for us to know about her. Vice versa, with the sports thing. I've seen sports essays that were absolutely amazing. I've seen sports essays that sounded like they were pulled off of one of the NBC sports, Winter Olympic sports packages that get really cliche. So think about what's important to you. I did want to throw in a couple of writing tips because I just care about my colleagues having to read all your essays. Pick something you care and dive in. You don't have time for a big intro. Pick something you actually care about. This is a big one for this year. Don't be needlessly dramatic. Oh my goodness. The amount of trauma and drama I have read about this year. We all go through breakups. Some of us have had our parents divorce. Some of us have had traumatic experiences. Many of us have had one form of trauma or another. I don't want to discount your trauma or your drama. What I want to ask you is that the thing that defines you that you want the college to know about? And sometimes it is. Sometimes it really is. But for example, the reason the Common App added that community disruption section about COVID-19 was the pandemic messed all of us up pretty badly. And so rather than we that was there to kind of encourage students not to write about it as your main essay topic. So if you got drama that's important, that's fine. But I can't tell you, and you may not believe me, how many essays I've had of students like working through a breakup in their college essay. And that's just, I don't need to know that, to be honest, as someone trying to evaluate you for education, an educational opportunity. Similarly, don't use a thesaurus. You should use words you would actually use in real life, kind of write like you speak within reason. One for my colleagues out there, use paragraph breaks. Please don't give us a wall of text. That's a really overwhelming thing. Only let your family and friends read it after a few drafts. And this is back to Ms. Withers' point. The earlier on other people start reading it, the less it becomes you, and the more fingers get it. It's like too many cooks in the kitchen. So you can have people read it, but wait until you have kind of a core draft, a few drafts in that stick out to you. That's important. A couple common mistakes I'd mention. Don't name another college in the Common App essay. It goes to all of them. So if you say to Jesus, and that's why UVM is my favorite college, that's like, we feel honored, but we're also like, oh man, like that went to all your schools on Common App. That's not great. That's important. Don't forget to proofread. Grammarly does not read for you. Grammarly is not going to do it. Spell check's not going to do it. If you're not a funny person naturally, this is not time to start trying. That sometimes falls flat. Again, don't fall into the cliches. And remember, this is about you. Write about yourself. I had an amazing essay a couple years ago about a student's mother making her journey from Mexico into the United States. And it was truly like gut wrenching. I was like crying at the end, but I also learned nothing about the student. At the end, I was like, I want to admit your mom to college. She sounds great. I know nothing about you. So remember, this is about you. Last thing I'll touch on is the supplemental as well. It depends. They vary widely by school, which is why you should check those requirements as soon as the applications launch in August. That is my homework for you. If there's one thing you can do in your process, you should not wait till the last minute to find out what the supplementals are. We often find they're rushed, and yet they are the most important in some ways because it's the question that school has specifically decided to ask you. And to me, it tells me a lot about how engaged you are with our institution. Will you be a good fit? The questions are going to vary. The most important thing is to actually answer the question. So for example, you can see USF's question here about our mission as a Jesuit institution. I look really carefully to figure out like, how does that mission inspire you? And that in some ways, that question can play a bigger role than the main Common App essay for me, because this is my chance to learn about how we are a good fit for you. So people get really stuck on that Common App because it goes to all colleges, and that's not important, but you should also spend a sufficient amount of time on the supplementals as well, because often those are more make or break for a specific school than your Common App essay is going to be. So that's my part. I hope that's helpful. And I'll turn it back to Ms. Withers.
Thank you. Thank you both, John and Jesus. So these are just some of the questions when it comes to the Common App essay. You select one of them. So the first one, some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful, they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. Reflect on something that someone has done for you that has made you happy or thankful in a surprising way. How has this gratitude affected or motivated you? And then there's a last one that it's an actual, you can share an essay on any topic of your choice. It could be one you've written already or one that responds to a different prompt or one of your own design. Again, these are just questions to start getting your brain flowing, right? Like which one you completely resonate with, right? If you're like, I always tell my students, process of elimination is a part of the college application process. For me, I'm not a very creative person, or let's say hypothetically, I've never gone through too many obstacles. I'm not necessarily going to talk about an obstacle, I've encountered or a challenge or a setback, okay? But I can connect with an identity. I identify as a Black and Latina woman. I identify as a mixed woman. I identify as a mother. All these different things. I know that I can connect. I have more than 600 words to write about my identity, who I am, and that I'm so proud of. So again, if you're starting to write and you're like, oh my gosh, I only have 150 words. Okay, scratch that. Let's look at a different subject. Let's look at a different topic, right? You have about 6 or 7 of these that you can select from. And then if you go back, let's look at USC, because I always say USC has like a funky way for the writing supplements. They're very different compared to other ones. So again, the Common App personal essay is required. And then there are writing supplements, right? they give you 3 different prompts, right? 250 word limit. So you can select from that. And then there's another one that talks a little bit about your academic interests and what you would like to explore at USC specifically. And then this one's actually regarding if you were if you took a gap year. So that would be for students who might be transferring. But then it gets into some really curious ones like best movie of all time, dream job, dream trip, what TV show would you binge watch next, favorite book. And this is I've literally had students come to me and say, Miss Withers, what should I say for like my dream trip? And I'm like, whatever your dream trip is, like, be honest, right? Like one of his, like your favorite snacks. I love Cheez-Its and Goldfish. I'm going to say Cheez-Its and Goldfish, right? Like be you. And so I think that's like really, really important to look at that. Again, every single university is different. Arizona State University, I believe they have optional Common App personal essay. However, I'm still going to tell you, you should include the Common App personal essay. John, Jesus, do you have anything else you'd want to say quickly before we start with the questions?
Yeah, I typically, when I do like essay workshops, I tell students, you should like think about your essay as a meal, right? So typically in a formal essay, you have like your intro, your like main dish, your dessert, maybe some coffee, etc., your water. When it comes to writing your college essay, forget about all the other components. Focus just on the main meal. So instead of doing the intro and then going to your main point, just go straight into the point. Because we do have about 10 minutes at most, if we have generous time, to review your entire application.
Yeah, I'll just jump on that point too and agree. I think for those that are Harry Potter fans, I often make the comparison of a pensive. If you know the scene where like there's that thing they used to look into people's dreams or memories, I guess. And there's the first time Harry Potter uses it. And if you haven't seen Harry Potter, I'm sorry, I'm just like going over your head, but we'll see. But the point I would make is there's no intro. He just ends up in the middle of the story. And I think that's the same thing for a college essay. There's not, to Jesus' point, there's not time for you to do this big intro. There's not time for you to like start explaining your story. And you have to really just get to the point. And that's, I can't focus enough on this idea that you have to be really clear and you have to know what you want us to know about you. If you go in kind of, well, I remember this, that's fine for your first draft, but if that's your final draft, we are looking, as we're reading, for the clear takeaways of what you will bring to our campus. This is not a free write. There is a purpose behind this exercise, right? And I think that's always important to remember. There is a purpose. This is a purpose-driven essay of getting you to the college you want to be at. And so part of that is being strategic to share what you want that school to know about you, knowing that you can't share everything. So keep coming back to that. And if you're not sure, if that's a scary question to you at this point in your year, that's why we're starting this now. It takes introspection. It takes quite a bit of self-reflection to know what those things are.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you both for that amazing insight. All right, we're going to start answering some questions. Okay, the first one is from Raven. How would you weigh the importance of essays comparable to other parts of the application? John or Jesus, feel free to answer any of them. I can answer some too as well.
I can give it a shot. I always sort of, in the most popular answer for a lot of these questions, it will depend. It depends on the institution. It depends on the intended major that you list on your application. At UVM, it might depend on the type of college that major is listed as. So it's an important factor. In a competitive year, if a student has met the admissions criteria, it can help us sort of make that possible. It gives us more information to feel more comfortable and more confident saying we're going to admit this student because we have the student seems very interested in the University of Vermont or X school. So it depends, but it's extremely helpful, especially when it's a competitive admissions year.
All right. Our next question is, can our personal essay center around an idea or facet of our life and or personality, or should it most definitely be a specific moment, event from our lives?
I'll take this because I know I kept saying moments. A moment can be an idea or a facet. What I'm more trying to focus, I think, for all of you is that if you try to cover everything, it's going to end up being it's too general. Like there's no way for you to cover everything. So one, take this with a grain of salt. You can change and do this